gave them your trust, and they broke it. You offered your loyalty, and they threw it away. You built a world for two, and they left you standing in the ruins, asking a silent, screaming question. Why? Why does this keep happening? We tell ourselves it was the wrong person. We believe if we just search harder, find someone better, someone more like us, the cycle will finally end. But what if that is the most dangerous lie of all? The German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer delivered a warning over 200 years ago. A truth so brutal it has been ignored, softened, or hidden away ever since. He argued that the problem is not a few bad people. The problem is people. All people, including you. He claimed that disappointment is not an accident. It is a fundamental law of human existence, as inevitable as gravity. Today, we are not just going to listen to his warning. We are going to dissect the hidden mechanism he uncovered, the psychological engine that guarantees people will fail you. And more importantly, we will uncover the one philosophical strategy he offered to make yourself immune to the pain, to see the world so clearly that disappointment loses its power over you forever. Because once you understand the game, you can finally stop being its pawn. If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe to our channel and like this video. Thank you for your support. You feel the sting of betrayal, a friend's careless words that slice through years of intimacy, a partner's broken promise that shatters your shared future, a family member's selfishness that reveals you were never their priority. The first story you tell yourself is a deeply personal one. They did this to me. You feel singled out, targeted, a specific victim of their specific failure. Your mind replays the moment of impact, searching for clues you missed, tormenting itself with counter-narratives of what you should have done differently. Your mind then creates a fantasy as a desperate anesthetic for the pain. The fantasy of the right people. Somewhere out there must be individuals who are wired like you, a tribe of kindred spirits, people who value loyalty as a sacred bond, who understand sacrifice as a prerequisite for love, who would never inflict the particular agony you now feel. So you embark on a lifelong, exhausting quest, sorting through humanity like a prospector panning for gold, convinced that one day you will find the one who will not disappoint you. Schopenhauer, observing this from the cold distance of his philosophical study, would look at this quest with a kind of profound, almost mournful pity. He would call it a noble, but ultimately doomed illusion. He argued that your search is flawed from its very inception because you are looking for something that cannot logically exist in the universe as it is constituted. You are hunting for a unicorn in a world made only of horses. You are looking for a person who can escape their own nature. To understand why, he offers a simple, devastating parable from his 1851 work, Parerga and Paralipomena, one that perfectly explains the quiet tragedy of every human relationship. He called it the Porcupine Dilemma. Imagine a group of porcupines huddling together on a brutally cold winter's day. The wind is merciless, and the frost threatens their very existence. To survive, they need to share their body heat. Instinct drives them to move closer, to press their bodies together against the killing cold. But as they draw near, an inevitable consequence occurs. They begin to prick each other with their sharp, unyielding quills. The pain of these small, constant stabbings becomes unbearable, forcing them to move apart. Yet, as they separate, the existential cold returns, a frigid reminder of their isolation and vulnerability. This primal need for warmth drives them back together again, and the cycle repeats. They are trapped in this torturous oscillation, perpetually torn between the pain of intimate connection and the suffering of utter isolation. This, Schopenhauer declared with chilling clarity, is the story of human relationships. The cold is not merely loneliness, it is the deep gnawing emptiness of individual existence, the terror of being a solitary consciousness adrift in an indifferent universe. The warmth is the profound comfort of connection we all crave, the feeling of being seen, understood, and valued. And the quills? The quills are the unchangeable architecture of our character, our deep-seated faults, our inescapable egoism, our volatile moods, our unconscious insecurities, our past traumas that manifest as sharp edges. We seek each other out for comfort, for love, for a shield against the void. But we cannot achieve that closeness without wounding one another. It is not a choice. It is not, in most cases, born of conscious malice. The porcupine does not choose to stab its neighbor. The quills are an integral defensive part of its being. In precisely the same way, people do not always intend to disappoint you. The disappointment is the inevitable byproduct of their very nature clashing with yours. They hurt you with their insecurities, which demand validation at your expense. They fail you because of their fears, which cause them to retreat when you need them to advance. They betray you because of their own ravenous desires, which will always, in a moment of crisis, eclipse their commitments to you. These are their quills, and you, in turn, have your own. You have disappointed people even when your intentions were pure. You have, through your own egoism and fear, been the source of someone else's pain. Your quest to find the right people is a quest to find a porcupine without quills. It is a search for a biological and psychological impossibility. So we, like the porcupines, find a compromise, a tolerable middle distance, a relationship where we are not close enough to cause severe bleeding wounds, but not so far apart that we freeze to death in solitude. This is the unacknowledged reality of most friendships, marriages, and family bonds, a state of mild chronic dissatisfaction, a low-grade disappointment that we learn to relabel as normal or realistic. We accept it because the alternative, the absolute zero of total isolation, feels infinitely worse. This realization is the first difficult step toward genuine freedom. It shifts the blame from the individual person to the impersonal dynamic itself. The person who disappointed you was not a monster specifically crafted to destroy your peace. They were just another porcupine, shivering in the cold, trying to get warm. And so were you. The pain you feel is real, but it is not personal. It is the impersonal structural pain of existence itself. But this raises a much darker question. What exactly are these quills? What is this unchangeable human nature that makes connection so painful and disappointment so certain? To answer this, we must look past the parable and into the terrifying force Schopenhauer believed secretly rules every living thing. You believe you are in control. You imagine your consciousness as a calm, rational CEO sitting in the corner office of your mind, making deliberate choices based on data and values. You think your choices are born from reason, your love from a pure heart, and your goals from a noble vision you have carefully constructed. Schopenhauer rips this comforting self-portrait to shreds. He argues that you, and every person you will ever meet, are a puppet, and the puppet master is a blind, ceaseless, insatiable, and fundamentally irrational force he called the will to life, or simply, the will. The will is not a divine plan or your personal desire. It is a raw, primal, metaphysical energy, a blind, striving force that animates everything in the universe, from a plant desperately twisting its leaves toward a sliver of sunlight, to you relentlessly chasing a promotion, a relationship, or a fleeting moment of pleasure. The will has only one amoral, unthinking objective: to live, to expand, to affirm its own existence, and to continue at any cost. It does not care about your happiness. It has no concept of morality. It is utterly indifferent to the promises you made or the people you profess to love. Your consciousness, your intellect, your entire personality, the parts you think of as you, are merely a recently evolved servant to this ancient hidden tyrant. Your intellect is the lantern the will carries to better illuminate the path to its own satisfaction. It is the relentless, guttural voice inside you that whispers, I want more security. I want more social validation. I want more sensory pleasure. I want to survive. This is the metaphysical engine driving every human being. When you finally absorb the sheer scale of this idea, the entire landscape of human disappointment reconfigures itself before your eyes. You realize that when people disappoint you, it is not a failure of their character. It is a victory of their will. Their individual will to life demanded something: survival, status, pleasure, and their conscious mind, the dutiful servant, simply obeyed, and then constructed a plausible story to justify the action after the fact. Think of the friend who betrayed your secret. You perceived it as an act of personal malice, a targeted assassination of your trust. Schopenhauer would say their will to life, perhaps manifesting as a desperate desire for social status or to curry favor with a more powerful individual, was fundamentally stronger than the abstract principle of loyalty to you. Their consciousness, the press secretary of the will, simply invented a justification. It wasn't a big deal. Or you would have done the same. The decision was already made in the dark, primal basement of their being, by the will itself. Think of the partner who left you for someone else. You experienced it as a devastating rejection of your worth, a judgment on your very essence. Schopenhauer would argue their will, driven by a primal, non-rational need for novelty or what it perceived as a better genetic match for reproduction, issued an irrevocable order. Their feelings of falling out of love were the emotional rationalization for the will's decree, not the cause of it. The will is the legislator. Feelings are just the judiciary interpreting its laws. Every person you meet, from the saintly to the sinister, is the physical manifestation of an insatiable, egoistic striving. Their primary biological and metaphysical function is to serve their own will. Your happiness, your needs, your desires will always be secondary to that prime directive. This is not a cynical opinion. It is a biological and philosophical reality. Egoism is not a moral flaw to be corrected. It is the default factory setting of a being enslaved by the will to life. So when you place your ultimate hope and the foundation of your well-being in someone else, you are making a catastrophic strategic error. You are asking a puppet to defy its strings. You are asking a slave to ignore the whip of its master. They cannot. And when they inevitably serve their will over their promises to you, you call it disappointment. Schopenhauer would call it the predictable, mechanical functioning of the universe. This depersonalizes the wound in a way that is both chilling and profoundly liberating. The pain is no longer a story about you and your failure to be good enough to be loved. It becomes a story about the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. It was never personal. They were simply following their programming. But this leads to the most painful realization of all. If everyone is a puppet of their own will, what were you connecting with in the first place? What was that love you felt? That profound, soul-deep sense of being understood? Was any of it real? Here we arrive at the heart of the human tragedy, the core of our most cherished and painful experiences. Schopenhauer argues that what we call love or deep connection is often the most sophisticated, beautiful, and cruel trick the will plays on us. We are not seeing the other person at all. We are seeing a projection of our own soul, a mirage generated by our own desperate needs. When you fall in love, when you find a best friend, you feel an electrifying sense of recognition. You think, finally, someone who gets me, someone who sees the world the way I do. This feeling is intoxicating, more potent than any drug. It is the momentary cure for our chronic existential loneliness. But Schopenhauer warns with the gravity of a surgeon delivering a grim diagnosis. You are not seeing them. You are seeing the parts of yourself that you have projected onto their relatively blank screen. You are in love with a beautiful, shimmering illusion, a flattering reflection staring back at you from the mirror of their eyes. You admire their kindness because you value kindness in yourself and have projected your personal ideal of it onto them, ignoring evidence to the contrary. You praise their loyalty because you desperately need loyalty and have painted them as the perfect, unwavering icon of it. You are not interacting with a real, flawed human being, a fellow slave to a relentless and selfish will. You are interacting with a fantasy that you have constructed, a character you've written for a play taking place entirely inside your own mind. The disappointment, the soul-crushing agony of betrayal is the moment the mirror cracks. It is the moment they do something so undeniably selfish or alien that it contradicts your projection. The moment their will asserts itself in a way your fantasy did not permit. Suddenly, the beautiful reflection vanishes, and for the first time, you see the stranger who was standing there all along, a stranger with their own separate will, their own private fears, their own egoistic drives that have nothing to do with you. You are not hurt because they changed. You are hurt because you have been forced to see them for what they always were. And you are horrified that you gave your heart, your trust, and your vulnerability to a ghost you created. This is especially and brutally true in romantic love, which Schopenhauer saw as the will to life's absolute masterpiece of deception. The intense passion, the obsessive thoughts, the overwhelming feeling that you cannot live without this person. He stated this is not a spiritual bond, it is the will's genetic trickery, what he termed the genius of the species, Genius der Gattung, in his essay, The Metaphysics of Sexual Love. The will, in its blind drive to create the next generation, creates an overwhelming illusion to ensure the propagation of the species. It doesn't care if this person will make you happy in 10 years, or even 10 minutes. It only cares that their genetic makeup combined with yours is optimal for producing healthy offspring. To achieve this biological end, it deploys its most powerful weapon. It makes you feel like you have found your cosmic soulmate, so you will enthusiastically commit to a biological task you might never rationally agree to. Once the biological goal is achieved, perhaps after a child is born or the initial passion required for procreation is no longer necessary, the will withdraws its magic. The special effects budget is cut, the illusion vanishes, and the two people, now stripped of the will's intoxicating glamour, look at each other in the harsh light of reality and wonder what they ever saw in one another in the first place. This is the spirit of the idea that when love is satisfied, the devil's laughter is heard. It is the silent, cosmic laughter of the will, which masterfully used your most profound feelings for its own ends and then discarded you to deal with the consequences. This is a brutal truth. It feels like it strips all the beauty and meaning from life, but it is also the key to your liberation. If you understand the mechanics of the illusion, you can no longer be its victim. You can finally learn to navigate the world with your eyes open, armed with a terrible and powerful clarity. So, what is the solution? If humanity is a collection of self-interested porcupines, driven by a blind, tyrannical will, and our most cherished connections are often just a grand illusion, should we retreat into bitter, cynical isolation? No. Schopenhauer's lesson is not to abandon the world, but to re-engage with it on entirely new terms. It is a rebellion, not of action, but of perception. The first act of this rebellion is the systematic, ruthless assassination of expectation. You must, with conscious and continuous effort, stop expecting people to be anything other than what they are. Flawed, ego-driven beings primarily serving the dictates of their own will. You must incinerate the hope that you will find selfless loyalty, unconditional love, and perfect telepathic understanding. To expect these things from a being designed for self-preservation is to set yourself on fire and pray for rain. It is a form of madness, a persistent and painful refusal to accept the terms and conditions of existence. Lowering your expectations is not cynicism. It is the highest form of psychological self-respect. It is building a fortress around your own peace of mind. When you expect nothing, every small, genuine act of kindness from another person becomes a surprising gift, not a contractual obligation. Every moment of true connection, however fleeting, is a startling miracle, not a baseline requirement for your contentment. You are no longer perpetually wounded by reality because you are finally aligned with it. The second act of rebellion is to meticulously depersonalize the pain. The next time someone disappoints you, a broken promise, a thoughtless remark, a selfish act, practice a new mental exercise. Do not say, "They did this to me." Instead, diagnose the situation with clinical detachment. Their will asserted itself. Do not say, "They betrayed my trust." Say, "Their survival instinct momentarily overrode their social programming." This is not an empty semantic game. It is a fundamental reframing. You do not get angry at a storm for raining or a virus for spreading. You recognize their inherent nature and take rational measures to protect yourself. You build a sturdy roof. You wash your hands. You must learn to see people's harmful actions in the same way, not as personal attacks, but as the impersonal weather patterns of the will. This practice drains the poison of resentment from the wound. The pain of the event might still be there, but the bitterness, the corrosive feeling of being personally wronged and victimized, begins to dissolve. You start to see people with a kind of tragic, knowing compassion. You see them all, yourself included, as struggling puppets on invisible strings, fighting desperate battles they do not understand for a master they cannot see. Your white-hot anger towards them can then transform into a kind of sober, detached sadness for the universal human condition. This emotional shift is the key. You move from being a participant in the drama at the mercy of the plot to an observer of the system. And from that elevated vantage point, you cannot be so easily harmed. You now have the shield, but a shield is for defense. The final step is to build a life where you need the shield less and less. We began this journey with the acute pain of being let down by others. We learned that this pain comes from a fundamental misunderstanding of reality. We thought people were rational angels, but discovered they are instinctual porcupines. We believed connection was a meeting of souls, but found it was often a projection of our own. We now have the clarity to see this, but clarity is not the final destination. The ultimate truth Schopenhauer offers is this: the only lasting solution to the problem of other people is to build an inner world so vast, so rich, and so compelling that you no longer depend on their world for your psychic survival. Freedom from disappointment is not found in the endless, frustrating search for better people. It is found in becoming a person who does not fundamentally need others to validate their existence or regulate their emotional state. Your relationships with others should be a source of potential joy, an optional supplement, not a necessary condition for your happiness. He believed that the greatest minds, the most noble intellects, naturally gravitate towards a degree of solitude, not because they hate humanity, but because they have cultivated an inner life so vibrant and intellectually satisfying that the comparatively shallow chatter and drama of most social intercourse becomes a distraction, an interruption. This is your final, most important task: to build your own inner fortress. Fill it not with trivial hobbies, but with the enduring treasures of the human mind, with knowledge, with art, with philosophy, with a deep engagement in a skill or a science. Cultivate a purpose that is entirely your own, one that cannot be given to you by a partner or taken away by a friend's betrayal. When your sense of self and your source of meaning are anchored deep within this internal fortress, the storms of human relationships can rage outside the walls, but they cannot touch your core. Solitude ceases to be a punishment for being unloved. It becomes a sanctuary, a cherished space where you can be fully yourself, free from the exhausting need to perform, to pretend, to constantly manage the quills of others. This is not a call to become a bitter hermit. It is a call to become whole, to become self-sufficient, so that when you do choose to engage with people, you do so from a position of profound strength, not desperate need. You can love them, enjoy their company, and forgive them for being the flawed, struggling, will-driven creatures they are. Because your happiness is no longer in their hands, it is safely in yours. This is the ultimate power, not controlling others, but achieving total independence from their approval or disapproval. You came here feeling like a victim of other people's failures. You leave understanding that you were primarily a victim of your own false hopes. Now you are free from them. You have seen the brutal mechanics of reality. You have the intellectual tools to change your perception. You can now walk through the world no longer as a naive, shivering soul begging for warmth, but as an awakened mind carrying your own light. Heed Schopenhauer's warning: let go of the illusion, embrace the truth. And in that truth, you will not find the giddy happiness you were once looking for. You will find something far more valuable and enduring. You will find peace. If this journey into the brutal honesty of Schopenhauer resonated with you, it is because you are one of the few who prefer a difficult truth to a comforting lie. This is not just a channel. It is a gathering place for those minds. If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe to our channel and like this video. Thank you for your support. Share your own story of disappointment in the comments below. Let us see the patterns together. You are not alone in your clarity. You have found your tribe of porcupines who have learned to admire each other from a safe, respectful distance.